settler movement that followed. As far as bringing people out west, we talked about miners and cowboys last time. This time, talking about a lot of people start going for a new start, just like in the other way, but also a lot of immigrants that came over to the United States that are making an attempt to start a new life, live on their own, get out of the cities. So the reason this matters is because the government encourages people to move west, and it changes the landscape of the West. We obviously become one of the greatest producers of grains and crops in the world. And then also the final frontier, not Star Trek wise, the frontier, this great West, this idea of freedom and that rough and tumble moving west kind of goes away because slowly fences come up, farms come up, and that idea that you can just roam all over the West slowly disappears. Now, a question to think about as we're going through this is what encouraged settlers to move west into the Great Plains? And that's kind of been the overall theme of this moving west section, or this chapter, is that idea of why. Why would people do this? It's obviously not a great life, and it's a difficult life. So why would people do that? That's what we're going to look at here. So as we're looking here, the beginnings of settlements, the government really promotes this moving west, this idea of linking the country, and pamphlets, posters are used to encourage expansion. And what's interesting is that Europeans and Americans saw cheap land for the taking. A lot of them saw it as an investment opportunity. They were able to go out. Some people bought up land and then resold it. Others went out to start life. And the Homestead Act of 1862 actually gave 160 acres of land to a person as kind of a lease. And after 5 years on that land, it would become theirs. There's more to that act, but you can look it up on your own. But that's the basic gist of it, is it's cheap land. Cheap land out west. And for a lot of Europeans, this is something they would see, and they'd come over to the United States. The tough thing with this is that the posters a lot of times talked about this great land and how you become rich and how fertile the land was. And I think anybody that lives in the Midwest knows that there are very tough years. There are blizzards, there's drought, there are storms, there's wind, there's bugs. It's a tough go out here for a farmer even today. Here's an example of one of those posters. You see millions of acres, Burlington land, just these beautiful landscapes, trees. And there are parts of the plains that I know for sure there are no trees. So, some of it was to promote, and some people were able to make it out here and others weren't. Now the wheat belt, this area in the middle that grew all of this crop, had to learn some new techniques. And one of those was dry farming. They would plant it really deep in the soil where the water was, or where the soil was still moist, even sometimes during drought years. Now this will eventually have ramifications down the line, drying out the topsoil and leading to dust storms during the Great Depression. That's a few chapters away. Also, new plows allowed for deeper digging and the ability to get to that wet soil. This group that went out there and that did this dry farming and cut up this area were known as sodbusters. They would plow the plains. Many lost their farms due to drought, times of no rain, and wind, things of that nature. And also, for those that don't know, they also built their houses out of the sod. So that's the sod busting idea. So new innovations that came through, what does that do? Well, one thing a new innovation does is it allows for more efficient growth, more efficient production. And that's going to become a theme, not just in this chapter, but in the next chapter as well when we talk industrialization, that during this time, the Americas really benefited from this advance in technology that allowed for more simple production, cheaper production, the ability to make more money. That's the noon whistle there. Bonanza farms grew up, large farms and co-ops started to grow, farms that would buy up other smaller farms, become almost a big business, and that's something you see quite a bit today as well. So what happens to these farmers? Well, a couple things. One, hard times. We're a huge exporter of wheat. We're actually the largest by the 1880s, and then a drought hits the plains. The late 1880s, a lot of people lose their crop to that, and that's tough. I mean, this is a year-by-year thing. Not a lot of people have savings or anything saved up, and so a year like this can send them running. Supply eventually outpaced demand, and prices drop around this same time. And you would think that the drought and things like that would even it out. You got to remember there are other countries in the world that are producing. And so when supply is outpaced, the price goes down. Right? That's great for consumers. It's not good for farmers who need to live and to have overhead and capital. Closing the frontier. Eventually, like I said, there's these heroic ideas of moving west that we're going to go out there and we're going to live and we're going to, rough and tumble and fight Native Americans and all that. Most though were hardworking people who lived modest lives. They went out there, they worked hard, and their lives were simple. But they were okay with that. So an important event in history that happens during this time, April 22nd, 1889, the Oklahoma Land Rush. This is just an interesting one that we look at. The description: the government opened land. I should say open lands, and it was originally for Native Americans, but they decided to settle it, and they all lined up at the Oklahoma border, and at the sound of a gunshot, they all took off, and whoever could claim the land, you'd put your claim down, that was your land, it was free land. And some people snuck in early. They were called Sooners. That's the name of the Oklahoma Sooners for college sports. And these people, went over the border. Obviously, they couldn't police the entire border, but it's one of those moments in history that stands out. It's just a mad rush, a mad dash. There's a great scene in Far and Away. I'm not going to show it on this video, but there's a great scene where everybody's rushing to get that land. It works really well. That's the one. We're not going to show that part though. So that's basically the idea of the Midwest. That these people have moved that direction to start farms, to start new lives. They face a lot of hardship, but that's part of the adventure.